I've been learning that. I've been probably crazy my whole life to most people because I've always had bigger eyes and dreams and aspirations, and I've always gotten close to them every time I put it together. So as I've gotten older, I realize again that really happens more. You're more likely to be successful if you focus on the routines instead of the goal.
We're live with another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. Looking forward to today's topic, and we're really going to be diving into AI, contracts, business intelligence, the future of sports business with Taylor. Thanks for joining us today, Taylor.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. And Taylor's building a company called Doculingo, AI document kind of intelligence platform, really trying to transform the sports, global trade organizations, etc., especially specifically for contracts and athlete representation, collective sponsorship, all the above. Taylor's going to give us more of a extensive deep dive into that, but it's kind of where we'll be going today. So Taylor, let's just hit the ground running here. What
So
really, was it a personal experience, or what led you to realize this could be a player in the sports sector, or just in business in general?
I mean, I come from from like a very lived place. I grew up in a single parent home, almost made it through football, and saw closely how much, is decided for athletes rather than with them. So a lot of us were, although many of us are happy to be in the room if a scholarship or opportunity was on the table, usually you'll see, we'd sign whatever was in front of us and pretty much hope for the best. So, and I can give you like, an example of that. When I was in high school getting recruited, I can remember a time that miscommunication kind of presented itself where, I had a coach walk out who was at the University of Albany who was recruiting me. And, I had a coach on the with the high school that I went to in CT who basically told the coach I wasn't in school at that time. So just the miscommunication, I guess that gives you, a chip on your shoulder after years. But the fast forward, I ended up working in the government, later doing technology and operation work, even training officers on software and workflows around the Pentagon. And there you'll see like documents are treated like live assets. Every clause, every field, every dependency matters. So what hit with me was, why don't athletes and sports organizations get the same level of clarity and control? In sports, there's massive amounts of value that moves through contracts, but most people are kind of skimming through PDFs on their phones, trusting someone else to interpret it correctly. And that's where, the problem really sunk in for me, the gap between the stakes and then also the systems.
Hmm. I see. So then, obviously, and then how long? You've been 6 months, a year. How long has this kind of been building, or have you been thinking about it for a while?
Uh, it's been one of those things. Like I've been thinking about building. I've always been a builder. I mean, I built Resume GPT, didn't monetize on it during the heights of COVID, and we ended up having 5,000 users. So it really validated. And I think I've extracted all of my experiences professionally and personally throughout the years. So I can say this is like a lifeline long thing for me with extraction of just every experience that I've had. But on paper, it's been about 7 months. So.
Love it, love it. So then, as you're, kind of you started day one. What did it look like day one to now, 7 months later, in that process?
Yeah, we've been building. A lot of it has been feedback loops just to figure out and validate the problems that exist. Of course, sports being a network that I was associated to, I wanted to see if it was relevant. And as far as that, any customer feedback that we would have, as far as those feedback loops, and we've talked to LSU, we've talked to NIL at Duke, we've talked to a couple other organizations who were really able to tell us that this pain existed. And then from that point, it just validated what we were building, but then also allowed us to go back to the product roadmap and kind of clean up on the back end on what the product actually looks like. And in Doculingo, I could truly say is built from those feedback loops. A lot of it was the idea, but a lot of it was surveying out into the market to see exactly, the pains that people were having. And again, that's where, the features of key clause extraction, translation, which was big, and then also being able to sign things and get a signing probability on that contract or document. So,
Yes. So, if you, I would be interested in diving a little bit more into that kind of last part, the signing probability. What's that? Is that like a key feature? What kind of is that?
yeah, so it flags the risk and it kind of measures it through a matrix on the back end. So if there's anything in the clause, it actually has a way of saying this is a high risk, medium risk, or low risk. So if you have a multitude of low risks, then overall the signing probability would be high for you to actually sign that contract. And vice versa,
Okay.
if there's multiple highs, then that's a contract that you probably want to seek, legal advice or just do a little bit more than what our product probably can do for you at this moment.
Hmm. Hmm. I gotcha. And then I'd
Mhm.
be curious as far as the sports industry goes. You mentioned you talk with, athletes, collectives, sponsorship deals. Where in that kind of feedback loop have you seen maybe some of the most success, whether that be with collectives or specific athletes or brands, etc.?
Honestly, everywhere, man. I think, especially around NIL, brands more importantly, because we have an incentive tracker, so it's able to tie the incentive to the contractual terms and performance. But for every all the above at this point, I think families want more clarity. Brands want more clarity, especially where their revenue is tying to. And then also, of course, with the sports, athletic departments, with the new settlement that went out for what 20.5 million that's pushed out,
Hmm.
they want to have eyes on where that money is going, and then also the contractual terms that exist as well within those contracts for those athletes. So,
Right, right, right. And then where are some, obviously, you're in these contracts daily and whatnot, specifically speaking to the athlete contracts, or I guess just in contracts in general, where are some blind spots that you see in deals typically that, some people can be on the lookout for?
blind spots will be, and I can give you an example from like a family perspective. I had one family that I talked to who had an athlete who played at a really big school in the ACC, plays overseas now, and for them, the name being associated to the brand. And when that contract expires, there's contractual terms that says that they can still utilize his name. And for me, that doesn't do a service. Of course, we want to help brands out, but then also for the families involved, and two, they should be able to have clarity in a term like that. So
Hmm.
we quickly realized that a lot of the pain points are the one or two different words utilized in a contractual term that changes the entire definition of it. So
Interesting. And so then Doculingo can build out those like, one or two words or phrases and say, hey, these are something we should look at or dive into more.
right, and then it limits the legal jargon, so it puts it in plain English for you, and then from there, like we have a readability, so a readability score too. So for the average person to read a contract that has a heavy amount of legal jargon, it's definitely a platform that they want to utilize.
I see. And then as far as like exclusivity and usage rights, deliverables and things like that, what is like a typical maybe for athletes just getting started or maybe just signing these collective deals or agency deals? What are some of those things that you've seen that are can be problematic?
Yeah, so exclusivity is one of them. Like them stating like I didn't realize it couldn't work with any other brands in that category.
Hmm.
Usage rights to basically what I said with the name, right? I thought this was just for this campaign, not forever in any medium. You have incentives too, with our incentive tracker, like what counts as qualifying appearance, who tracks it, when do I actually get paid? Those are a lot of questions that we see that happen, not even just from the athlete side, but then also with the agents that are representing these athletes too, and then also even the brands that are pushing out these clauses. A lot of them, they're utilizing CRMs that are not really built to track and put out those notifications to let everyone know, and all parties that exist. And so I think with Doculingo, we have the ability to do all the above when it comes to the notification so that no one misses out on any
Yeah.
clauses or incentives.
Right. Yeah, it's huge, and I think as you kind of mentioned on the outset of the show here was making sure everyone's on the same page. There's no miscommunication. I think that's one of the biggest you know problems, right? And specifically in NILs, there's a lot of people involved. Whether it's the collective manager saying, we'll give you X, and the coach is kind of in the dark, and the school's in the
Right,
dark, and the kid and the family. So I think getting everyone on the same page
right.
is obviously crucial, especially nowadays. And where, as you're, in the kind of in this AI world and building every day, where do you think kind of AI, as far as in the NIL and the sports industry, where do you think the biggest change will come from here in the next few years?
For NIL,
Mm-hmm.
I think with AI, I think you want to be kind of careful with NIL. I think a lot of companies and those who represent these athletes will be utilizing AI, but again, this is the likeliness for these children, these
Mm-hmm.
kids, or these brands, right? The livelihood of them. So we have to be very, very careful when we utilize AI. I think there's going to be more measures, check and balances on how AI is utilized.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because there's a lot of capital that's involved that's moving. between the ranks. And I think at this point, you got to protect that. But then you also got to protect the athlete, not just the brands themselves, and the corporations. Like we want to help the corporations. That's why we have a B2B model, but we also want to be able to do that with also paying attention on what protection looks like for the athletes, and then also for the corporations and the brands themselves too. So I think more structure, more balance to AI in sports is definitely something we'll see unfold over the next within the next decade.
Mhm. Yeah, no, agreed for sure. And then obviously Doculingo doesn't just serve sports. You guys are kind of in the global trade, global market. So what's the balance between that? Obviously, you have a passion for sports and whatnot, but that's that's only a portion of the users and whatnot. So what does it look like on the other side of sports and whatnot?
Yeah, for us, which to, of course, my niche is working in sports. I think with the ex-Pentagon background too, global supply chain and logistics, there's a lot of things that are happening on that side too. There's contracts that happen in freight and transportation. When it comes to, a day, there's hundreds of documents that are pulling out, and a lot of times clauses get mixed, trade agreements get mixed. And so we have ability to really work. And I think we're scaling a lot quicker in conversations with the document intelligence platform that we put together because they're more focused on doc ops. And I just want to be clear, like Doculingo is not an AI company, right? We are a document intelligence layer. And then also under that umbrella of what doc ops is. So
Hmm.
supply chain with them dealing with global trade agreements and many of those documents that have proprietary data, it's really important for them to have it structured in a certain way, but then also avoid any issue when it comes to legal, overbilling them on contracts, which is what we ran into on multiple occasions, especially. And we did the same thing. We with sports, how we went out and kind of talked to the market. We've done the same thing on the global trade side, and I think we have a lot of upside and potential when it comes to scalability when it comes to focusing on the core plus side too as well.
Right, right. And I'd be curious, what does it look like? I'm sure, you're working across different languages, jurisdictions, regulations. So what does that process look like, especially, for the, maybe the imports and exports type of things? How does that all, I'm sure that gets pretty hairy there.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we got a LLM that kind of focuses index contracts, and we keep feeding it information. So the more contracts we get from different regions of the world, I think it'll start maturing a little bit. It's really based on the contracts and documents that we have here in the States, Canada, and then also in Latin America. But I think we'll be able to, and again, we always say we're not a legal company, right?
Yeah.
Please be advised. And so I think as we start maturing a little bit more, we'll be able to kind of catch those things before it becomes truly a problem. So
Hmm. Is there one kind of region or I guess client, business to business that you kind of have on I don't know, maybe like a dream client type of deal or someone that you think would be really cool to work with?
yeah, someone like even Pepsi, right?
Yeah.
Pepsi's all over the world right now. I think anytime we travel to different countries, you always see Pepsi somewhere.
Hmm.
So for us, since they're doing, I'm sure they're doing thousands and thousands of contracts all over the place. Having some of those conglomerates and those companies that we can represent would be pretty cool. Only because too, I remember growing up as a kid, and Pepsi always being the first choice for my mom. So it would be pretty cool to kind of tell her that story that we got them as a client customer later on in life. And I'm telling you, she's an admin. Like she used to drink Pepsi all the time and Coca-Cola. So
That's funny. That's funny. What about in the sports space or sports sector or anything like that?
sports sector right now, for us, obviously, like we've had conversations, but I think working with like the Nikes of the world would be
Yeah.
pretty cool. And again, similar situation. They're all over the place when it comes to their customer base and who they represent. And I think for us, just being at a certain age and growing up in the '90s, having that Nike meant a certain thing for you. And for us, I think it would be pretty cool to kind of work with them as well at some point in time. So
Yeah, I think that'd be a cool collab too, especially in that side of the world. And obviously you kind of grew up on the East Coast and whatnot, so it's been. I'm sure there's different sports and different segments. The country are big with one another. But what is about hockey? I saw you posted a few days ago about the hockey space and that community. What's kind of that impact and network been like as you've been building and growing?
I want to say shout out to Swift Hockey. I won't throw out the partnership that we're trying to put together, but they are killing it when it comes to making hockey sticks affordable for everyone.
Hmm.
And for me, I think that's the representation of where I come from. I come from basically the inner city of Boston, outside of Boston, which is called a city called Malden, Mass. And so for me, growing up in New England, one of the sports, my best friend who I just went, just was a part of his wedding last September. He played hockey, and this is a kid that I dearly love right now, kind of as my brother. And he played a sport that I couldn't play because I didn't have the money for it. And so, and I know I would have been dirty because if you asked me to get on skates today, I can skate pretty damn well. So I know there would have been a correlation between that. I know that probably would have been a great experience for me because most of the guys that I come across that play hockey are actually just really good guys to be around.
Hmm.
Um, and growing up in Boston, I think, for us, there's obviously some upside in that space too, to potentially do partnerships, just make it more accessible for most people.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I love to hear it, Dennis. I think obviously in kind of another one of your posts, you're talking about kind of the community and especially in hockey, but then obviously just like networking. So, your best one of your friends building that company. So, what's that kind of community network feel right as you continue to build? How important is that to you and for others who are trying to build?
I think in the world of AI, I think we need to humanize everything. And I think when we start collaborating with others, it's probably the most important thing. You have to find your audience. I always go by this thing, like in a place of scarcity, you find competition. In a place of abundance, um, collaboration. And
Hmm.
so for me, collaboration is probably the most important thing, but finding the community to be a part of. And I think that's how Doculingo moves to where it needs to be in certain places that it probably wouldn't have if we just don't kind of lean on each other and work, especially in this world of AI. So community brings that human element that I think we've all been missing over the last decade or two. And so, however we can contribute to that, I think that's probably the most important thing for all of us. So
Well said. Well said. I like that a lot. And as you've been on kind of this entrepreneurship journey, you've been building for a while. What are some, I guess, misconceptions in the entrepreneur space of building and working and building something from nothing?
that it's easy, man. And most of us are crazy until it works. So I've been learning that. I've been probably crazy my whole life to most people because I've always had bigger eyes and dreams and aspirations. And I've always gotten close to them every time I put it together. So as I've gotten older, I realize again that really happens more. You're more likely to be successful if you focus on the routines instead of the goal. And
Hmm.
so I've been focusing on just really like executing on my habits, my mood, my routines to help me get to this one KPI, this goal. And um, I think the misconception to people is that it's easy, or if it's not easy, it's extremely hard. And I think there can be a perfect medium if you do decide to put those routines into place and just discipline and execute from day to day. Take it one day at a time. That's really, really all you can do. So misconception is that people who try to build things are crazy. That's not the truth. Most of what we're looking at right now in the world that we deal with today was crazy about 10 to 15 years ago. And we're starting to see it kind of all unravel in front of us. Like AI, I wouldn't have thought of AI 10, 15 years ago, and now we're all utilizing it. I'm building a company that basically uses it as one of the main features. So, I think it's just we got to adapt, adopt, and continue to kind of move on. And so, yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. And I wanted to give a little shout out. Obviously, with you building the company and adapting and building, you won the NC what is it, Idea micro grant a few months ago or a few weeks ago rather. So, what did that feel like? Kind of having some validation towards your product and what you're building.
Yeah, so NC idea in this area is to many it's extremely huge, especially to win it within the last 6 months of moving here. We're
Hmm.
fairly new to North Carolina, so I think that's something that stuck out to most people. But it meant that, for me, it meant someone outside my world looked at our mission, our traction, our vision, and said, this isn't just interesting, it's commercially and socially meaningful. And NC Idea doesn't just fund ideas, they fund companies with real potential. So winning that grant validates, our market, our execution, our roadmap, and then the need for like clarity and contracts and documentation as a whole. So for someone who grew up almost with nothing, experiencing even like I haven't said it, but like homelessness at one point in high school and fought through adversity, it was a moment of like real affirmation for me. Not hype, not noise, but real institutional like validation.
Hmm. Yeah, kind of feel like you got that backing, can kind of build that confidence even more when,
Yeah.
kind of when others and your peers especially kind of, validate and, show your hard work's paying off, right?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We just had this summit too, which was pretty nuts, and it was good to kind of be acknowledged in a room full of 300 people, including Andrew Yang. Shout out to Yang Gang.
There it is. Yeah. So then,
So,
as you mentioned a little bit earlier about kind of your processes and day to day, are there certain tasks, right, like reading, staying up to date on industry trends? Some of the listeners kind of early out in their career, so they're trying to find their sweet spot, whether that's like Sports Business Journal or
yeah.
newsletters. Kind of what's your go-to as far as always learning and staying up to date?
Oh man, I'm controversial with that. So it's a bit of everything. Politics too, as well. I try not to be political, but the constant evolution of how things are changing in the world, and then
Right.
um, a slight glimpse on the ears on Scott Galloway. I don't know if
Hmm.
you're familiar, but Scott has a lot of funny takes, but he's
Yeah, he's
also an
like the
extreme.
bald guy, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I think I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
he's big on just like current trends that are happening in AI.
Hmm.
What's happening around stocks, finance, and I think if you keep having your brain's a muscle, so if you keep pushing it in multiple spaces, I think you'll eventually have a common denominator of understanding, and I think those are my keys for Scott Galloway, reading constantly books. So I got the book called The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, so I just been kind of reading that as well.
Yep, yep.
Um, and then yeah, man, just threads, a lot of back and forth, the common back and forth, pros and cons of seeing how people kind of go after each other. And like I said, it's always interests and pushes me to research a little bit more. And yeah, that's what I've been doing as of lately. So
I love it. I love it. It's always. I love how you said that the brain's a muscle. So you always got to keep that thing working and growing
yeah,
to kind of
yeah,
build upon that. As especially as a founder, is building something. You're wearing a lot of hats, day to day.
that's
So
wild.
the listeners they like to hear about what's a day to day look like as a founder, as a builder. Wearing all those hats.
Yeah, you're talking about one with kids. So wake up, lady gets the kid ready. She goes to school. I do the drop offs all the time. I'm already answering emails, looking at emails. That's not if I woke up at like 2:30 in the morning to use the bathroom and decide to look at emails too as well. And then just kind of just get after it, go, work out and do the same exact thing, just looking through emails, get the workout in, transition into either a co-working space or doing it at home in the home
Mhm.
office. Um, but yeah, it's constant emails, conversations, going on LinkedIn, reaching out to people, not cold outreach, but just saying like, hey, notice that we had a common, you know, um, thing we were interested in, a lot of engagement on that side. And it doesn't end, man, until about like 11:30 when the eyes shut. So when you have a kid and you try to go back home and you got to spend that 5 to 7, I mean, it's truly like you try to make a balance, but it's very hard to have a balance as an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people, that's also the misconception is that there's like a perfect balance and there's never ever a balance, man. It's trying to keep up with relationships and trying to maintain those two as well. And you lose a lot of people, right? It's kind of lonely in many cases too, because not everyone's executing. They may have like their set schedule where they have open
Hmm.
time and you just don't because you're traveling to try to make this thing work. And then you're also trying to be a father and everything else after that too. So there's no balance. But it's one of those crazy non-balances that I can appreciate. So
Yep. 100%. It's always moving, always growing. Is speaking of that, where as you continue building, you've obviously seen some great success in the recent months. So where do you see Doculingo in the next 12 to 24 months?
12 to 20, we put a timeline on it.
Well, we can say
Doculingo that
in the near future if that makes it easier.
12 24 is cool. I can work with that.
Okay.
AI powered negotiation. So maybe, full doc ops platform for sports plus trade, uh, scaling to multilingual contract analysis, across Latin America at some point, who knows? Um, getting the big guys on our side, right? Like if we can work closely with guys that like Teamworks too, that's here in Durham also,
Mm-hmm.
a partnership would be amazing to kind of aim for. And like I said, if I can get the Nikes and the Pepsis of the world early on, I think the ability for this to scale somewhere is massive. So let's hope it happens in 12 to 24 months. I'm okay if it happens after that, but it just happens. But I definitely see, based on the feedback, the traction we have had over the last 6 to 7 months, that this thing can definitely do a lot in the 12 to 24 months. Do we have our targets? Yes. Do we know what may likely happen? No. So I'll just kind of keep the good faith and keep going from there.
Yep, love to hear it. And where can the listeners, the viewers, the Pepsi executives, where can they find Doculingo? Where can they find you?
Everywhere sports tech conferences this year. But also you can reach us at www.doculingo.com or find me on LinkedIn, reach out at any point in time directly. I'll be happy to to have a conversation. If they're in the Durham or Raleigh area, definitely reach out to me because I will make sure to pay for a beer or whatever they're looking for.
Mhm.
Just to have a conversation on what Doculingo is doing.
Perfect, love it. So shout out to the East Coasters, especially in that region. Make sure to hit up Taylor. Taylor, thanks for joining us today. And before we go, I'd like to give you some. It's not a tough question, but it's kind of on the spot. What's your parting advice to someone, maybe to yourself 5 or 10 years ago?
Fail and love to fail, lean into it. Enjoy everything. Not every loss is every L, like they say, is a loss. It's actually an opportunity to have a learning experience from it. And so if you take that and accumulate it through time, you'll get to a point where nothing is impossible. And although everyone may probably think you're crazy. So keep going crazy, keep enjoying yourself, keep moving, and stay diligent.
Love it, love it. Way to send us off there, Taylor. And thanks again for joining us and to the Constant Sports listeners and viewers. This has been another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. We had a good chat with Taylor today, talking about Doculingo, what they're building, where they're going. So we're excited to see their growth and continue pushing forward. So thanks again, Taylor. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Connor. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You got it.